Hello and welcome to my channel Film Obsessed. Yes, you read the title right. I do think that 2004's Van Helsing is not how you do a monster movie right. I just watched it for the very first time and I sadly was a bit disappointed with it. I think that there is a great film within what I just watched that I did not get. And in this video today, I am going to break down why that is through my film analysis of it. On this channel, I normally talk about things that I enjoy and love in the world of movies and television, but today, that's not the case with this movie, unfortunately. Like I said already, I think that there is something great within Van Helsing, and that is ultimately what disappointed me the most about it. Some bad acting performances and accents, horrendous CGI, focus on spectacle, and lack of care for the characters brings it down for me. The only things that carry the movie are the premise, along with its lore and Hugh Jackman as the titular character of Van Helsing. Even then, with all that in mind, some of that stuff just never fully got fleshed out for me, and so along with a decent musical score and interesting set pieces, nothing else about the movie really did it for me. It is a movie that feels and plays out like one that came out back in the early 2000s as well. It looks like an accumulation of multiple different kinds of movies that came out during that time. Movies like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, where within Van Helsing, I could see the comparisons to make towards these movies based on the set pieces and how the production design is laid out through the overall scale of the movie. Stephen Sommers is the director for Van Helsing, and if that name is not familiar to you, well, you'll find that he is the guy who directed and worked on movies like the Brendan Fraser Mummy franchise, along with one of my personal guilty pleasures in the first live-action G.I. Joe movie with Channing Tatum. There is a level of cheesiness and campiness to those movies with how they do action, how characters act, but also the level of fun that those two things can bring to the rest of the movie, depending on the kind of person that you are with how you see that. When you bring all those comparisons together into one, you have a movie like Van Helsing, a cheesy and campy over-the-top monster movie featuring some of the most iconic horror characters in history under a staggering $160 million budget, which for that time is quite insane. You have a recipe there for something truly great, and yet it felt like it didn't come together in the best way it possibly could have. Where the movie, in my opinion, is at its worst is actually with the monster characters themselves. I never once cared for any of them for a multitude of reasons. Dracula, who is the movie's main antagonist, is just all over the place for me, including the girl vampires that he has under him. I mean no offense to this actor who I'm not as familiar with, but I don't think he played this role as well as he could have. I don't know if it was an issue of how Sommers directed him to act, but every time this character was on screen talking, I just couldn't help but be taken out of the scenes due to his accent being really bad, but also him not acting like you would think Dracula would act. The character just didn't come off to me as being as entertaining as I hoped it would be for the best, as opposed to what it was with it being the worst. Frankenstein's monster is also a character in this movie that I just could not get into. For one, the acting performance was just not doing it for me by the actor who I again am not familiar with, but also he would come in and out of the story to where I would lose track of his importance to the overall narrative given just how much focus there is on a lot of the other plot lines. Finally, you have the Wolfman character, which was probably the best of the three in my personal opinion. I felt much more attached to that character given the fact that it relates to Van Helsing near the end of the film, and he was also really fun to watch in some of the action sequences. The whole spectacle nature of the fights for the monsters I thought was slightly cool to see, but that is also where I think the movie loses itself for another reason why it didn't work out. In today's day and age, one of the things that I think hurts a lot of movies that we get now is the idea of spectacle over everything else. It is this notion that a lot of budgets nowadays put their money towards the idea of making something try to be more entertaining that it actually needs to be through spectacle. So that can include an overusage of CGI, green screen elements, and all that other stuff that makes something look a lot more fake and unnatural. That is where a lot of the budget for Van Helsing went to, which I can understand for why to some regard, but it is also something that takes away from the rest of the parts of the movie that you should also have a focus to, which is character development and story. Your movie cannot progress and work to the audience member watching it if you don't get them invested in the things that drive it, which are the characters. Like I said already, Hugh Jackman is great in his role as Van Helsing. This dude does not miss in any of the roles that he plays, and even Kate Beckinsale does what she can as Anna, despite the fact that even her accent was not good either. But none of these characters ever truly get fleshed out because the movie tried to do too much and focus more on the spectacle. They even wasted an actor like David Wenham, who, if you don't know, is this guy.
To Leonidas and the brave 300 to victory!
Yeah, That same dude who gives the awesome speeches in 300 is wasted in this movie as sort of a bumbling idiot at times as a servant to Van Helsing in his journey. His character ties into the lore aspect a lot within the world of what Van Helsing sets up for you. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is actually at the beginning when Van Helsing goes back to the Vatican after getting off a job. Above ground, you see what you might think is the normal Vatican, but below ground is where it gets more interesting as you dive deep into that world of monster hunting. The idea that the Vatican has a secret organization underneath itself that partakes in monster hunting is really cool, to even all the things that they are creating down there to the weapons that they give Van Helsing. A lot of that stuff can really intrigue a new viewer, and even the biggest nerds who consume that more hardcore stuff that they revel in with the franchises that they love. Again though, that's really the only scene in the movie that you get to explore all that stuff. Things don't really get enough time for us to get attached to them. This now brings me to a point of conversation that I also think is going to be interesting to see people talk about in the comments below. There is also this idea that nowadays people are not as big of a fan of remakes, even though from time to time we do get some good ones. If it was me, this would be one of the movies that I would remake. Do it in a 3-film trilogy on a lower budget than 160 million, to where you take your time in setting up this grand event of Dracula taking over the world with his vampires, using Frankenstein's monster as the way to do it. It felt like the actual Van Helsing movie tried to squeeze a 3-film story into one, and that simply just doesn't work. Put more emphasis on the ability to not use as much CGI and build your characters. Unfortunately, this would not happen today, and I'm one of those people who normally has a pet peeve when people say you couldn't make this movie today. You can definitely make any movie you want as long as it works, and there are past examples to show that it can. With the dark and more monster-like universe of characters, that has been something that the film industry has tried to do and failed in multiple instances, and I don't think anyone is trying to recreate that anytime soon. When it comes to giving my final thoughts on the film, I think it is important that I mention this just in case there are fans of the movie who are watching my video now. For someone who is a new viewer of this film, I have to keep in mind that there is a level of respect I must give to those who do love it. Based on some threads that I've read online when researching to make this video, I've seen that some people have come around to it recently, calling it a fun time that's not worth fussing over too much, and to some degree, I see where those people are coming from. It totally feels like a guilty pleasure movie in some ways, but also one that is steeped within a world that is very fascinating to look at because of its characters and its lore. They even made a video game off the movie, which makes a lot of sense because back in the day, this was something that a lot of video game companies did, where they would make a game off the movie, as opposed to nowadays where we see movies getting made off the games. It even went on to make $300 million at the global box office, which all things considered is pretty decent. So again, for all the faults that I personally saw within it, I still think that it is cool to see that there is a fandom that this movie brought in. Movies are a form of art, and they are subjective like all other things that we as consumers experience, and so I will absolutely respect anyone who says that they do love this movie. So there you have it, my film analysis of the movie Van Helsing. What do you all think? Leave your comments down below on what you think about the movie and my analysis of it. Thank you for stopping by my channel. If you want to see more moving forward from me with regards to film and television, and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell. I'm trying to build a new community on this channel, and your support would be greatly appreciated. That's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for the next video.